"You kissed me in front of 200 people," Dominic Voss said, his voice so calm it didn't belong in the same room as a heartbeat. "Now half of them think you belong to me. The other half are wondering if you'll survive the week." Maya Reeves stood with her back to the window of a private room she hadn't chosen to enter, the noise of the engagement party bleeding through the walls like something wounded, and she thought, good, let them wonder. Her name was Maya Reeves, 26 years old, and the man standing 3 feet away from her, the man she had just kissed in front of every person her fiancé had ever wanted to impress, was Dominic Voss, not Connor Voss, the man who had slipped a diamond onto her finger 4 months ago, not Connor, who had been pressed against her sister in a supply room 20 minutes ago, his hands in Lily's hair. Lily's laugh muffled against his shoulder like she was trying to be quiet about it. No, Maya had kissed Dominic Voss, Connor's uncle, the man Chicago's criminal underground called the Architect, the man who had built the Voss family's reach from a single warehouse on the south side into something that no city official could touch without his permission. She hadn't known that when she kissed him. She had just known he was standing alone by the window, looking out at the city the way people look at things they already own, and that he was the first person she had seen after walking out of that hallway, and that something in her chest had cracked open and she was not going to cry in front of Connor's family. So she had kissed him instead. If you want to know how a woman like Maya Reveskaful, controlled, the kind of person who triple checks the exits before she sits down in a restaurant, ends up destroying her own engagement in 1 impulsive second, then stay with me. Leave a comment with your city so I know who's watching, because this story goes to places I'm still not sure I believe. Now let's go back to the beginning. The Whitmore Hotel's grand ballroom had been Lily's idea. Maya had wanted something smaller, a dinner, 40 people, the kind of engagement party where you could actually hear what someone was saying to you. But Lily had said, with the specific authority of an older sister who had been planning other people's events since she was 12, that Connor's family expected a certain scale. And Maya, who had spent 26 years learning to hold her needs a little smaller so that everyone around her could breathe easier, had said, fine, whatever you think is best. That was the first thing she would learn to stop doing. The ballroom held 212 guests. Maya knew because she had made the seating chart herself, 3 revisions. Printed and reprinted on cardstock, she had driven 40 minutes to pick up from the specific print shop Lily had recommended. She had folded 212 name cards by hand. She had tasted 7 different past appetizers and chosen the ones she thought Connor would like best. Connor, who was currently in a supply corridor off the main kitchen, with his hands in her sister's hair. Maya had gone looking for Lily because Lily had been gone for 45 minutes, and their mother was starting to ask questions. She had followed the sound of Lily's specific laugh, lower than her public one, the one that meant she was comfortable, the one Maya had known since they were children, sharing a bedroom through a service door she probably wasn't supposed to use, and down a corridor that smelled of industrial cleaner and warming trays. And then she had stopped. She had stood there for what felt like a long time but was probably 4 seconds, looking at her sister and her fiancé in the gap between a rolling cart and a shelving unit, and then she had turned around and walked back out. No crying. Not in front of the warming trays. Not in front of the 212 people who were eating the appetizers she had chosen. She had walked back through the service door and into the main corridor and turned the wrong way and ended up in the gallery hall that ran along the east side of the ballroom, where the noise was filtered and dim and the windows looked out over the river, and there had been a man standing by the far window, alone, his back half turned. A glass of something amber held at his side with the total ease of someone who had never once needed to busy his hands to look comfortable. He was older than Connor by enough that it registered somewhere in his early 40s. Dark hair with grey at the temples. The kind of suit that didn't look expensive because it looked like it had never considered being anything else. He stood the way men stand when they are used to rooms going quiet when they enter them. Maya did not know who he was. She did not think about who he was. She walked up to him, put one hand on his jaw. He turned, not startled, just turning, as if he had always known she was coming, and kissed him. He went still for exactly 1 second, and then he did not pull away. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, maybe less. When Maya stepped back, she realized that the gallery hall was not as empty as she had thought. 3 women near the far door had turned to look. A man in a grey suit had his phone half raised, and the man she had just kissed was looking at her with dark eyes that were not surprised, not even a little, and something cold moved through her chest that had nothing to do with regret. "I'm sorry," she said, because she was still Maya Reeves, and Maya Reeves apologized even when she shouldn't. I should go." "You're Maya," he said. "Not a question." She stopped. "How do you know my name?" He looked at her for a moment that felt longer than it was. "I'm Dominic Voss," he said, "Connor's uncle." The gallery hall, with its filtered noise and its riverview windows, seemed to get smaller. "Oh," Maya said. "Yes," he said. "Come with me." He led her, not touched, not guided, simply walked in a direction, and she followed, because the alternative was to go back to the ballroom, through a side door and down a carpeted hallway, to a private room she later understood was always reserved for him at this hotel, because the Whitmore had held Voss family events for 30 years, and Dominic's needs were part of the institutional memory. The room was small. 2 chairs, a low table, a sideboard with a decanter. Dominic poured 2 glasses, set one in front of her, took his own, and stood. He didn't sit. She didn't either. "What you saw," he said. "How long has it been going on?" Maya's hands tightened around the glass. "You know about them." "I know about a great many things." "That's not an answer." He looked at her with eyes that processed rather than emoted, and said, "No, it isn't." Something in her chest, which had been cracked open since the supply corridor, did something complicated. She had expected him to be shocked. She had expected someone to be as blindsided as she was. Instead, this man, who had never met her before tonight, stood in front of her with the expression of someone watching a pattern complete itself. "You already knew," she said, "about Connor and Lily." He didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it. He said, "What do you intend to do?" "I don't know yet." She set the glass down. "I kissed you because you were there, and I didn't want to cry, and I'm sorry. I genuinely didn't know who you were. I should go." "I should?" "The people who saw you in that gallery are currently speculating," Dominic said, the same flat calm, about what it means that Connor Voss's fiancé kissed Dominic Voss at her own engagement party. "By tomorrow morning, half of Connor's business associates will have heard. By the end of the week, everyone who matters in this city will have an opinion about it." Maya went very still. "Why does that matter?" He set his glass down on the sideboard with the deliberate quiet of a man who never makes accidental sounds. "Because Connor Voss is not simply a man who cheated on his fiancée," he said. "He is a man with debts, and the people he owes are not patient. And for the last 3 months, he has been offering assurances to dangerous people that involve you." The ballroom noise came through the walls. Somewhere in there, Lily was probably back at the party, laughing at someone's toast. Connor was probably straightening his tie. "Involving me how?" Maya said. Not a question. A very quiet statement of the fact that she needed to know. Dominic looked at her for a long moment, and something moved in his expression, not warmth, not exactly, but something that was aware of her as a person rather than a piece of a problem. "That," he said, "is what I've been trying to determine. And what you just did in that gallery hall has made the timeline significantly more complicated." Maya looked at Himmat, this man, who had known her name before she said it, who had not stepped back when she kissed him, who stood in this private room like the air in it was simply waiting for instructions, and understood that she had walked through a door tonight that didn't open from the other side. She had gone looking for her sister and found something else entirely, and Dominic Voss, for reasons he had not yet explained. had known she was coming. The Whitmore's private room had no clock on the wall. Maya noticed this later, when she was trying to reconstruct the sequence of the evening, the exact order in which things had broken and rearranged themselves and couldn't. Time in that room had moved the way it moves in emergencies, stretched and compressed at once. Some minutes gone before she registered them. Others staying entirely too long. She sat down eventually. He did not. "Connor owes money," she said, not a question this time. "To a reconstruction." She was good at reconstructions. She had spent 2 years of law school before she dropped out, learning to take disparate facts and find the shape underneath. Among other things, to who? People who prefer not to be named in conversations like this one. Then describe them. Dominic turned from the sideboard where he had poured himself a second drink just barely, a measure she suspected he hadn't touched in minutes. He looked at her as if recalibrating something. "You're asking the right questions," he said, and it sounded less like a compliment than a notation. "I'm asking the obvious questions. Most people in your position would be asking about Connor and your sister. I already know what I need to know about Connor and my sister." She kept her voice even. The crack in her chest was still there, but she was applying pressure to it. "The way you do with a wound when there's no one else in the room. I can feel bad about that later. Right now I'm trying to understand what you mean by involving me." Something shifted in the room. Not in Dominic, it was almost preternaturally still, but in the quality of the silence, which went from careful to something that might, in another kind of man, have been called respect. "There is an organization," he said, "that operates out of the eastern part of this city. They move money, primarily, and occasionally other things. Connor approached them 8 months ago with a business proposition. The proposition has not gone well. They want their investment returned, with interest, and Connor has been managing their expectations by offering them collateral they can recoup against if he defaults. And the collateral is me. The collateral," he said, "is your signature on a set of documents that would give them access to accounts your father holds in your name. Your father is not aware the accounts were identified. Connor is the only person who knows where those documents are, and he has represented to this organization that he has full access to them through his relationship with you." Maya sat with this for a moment, outside, muffled by walls and carpet and 40 years of upscale insulation. The engagement party continued. Glasses clinked. Someone near a microphone said her name, and a room full of people who didn't know what she now knew laughed warmly. "How long have you known this?" she said. 3 months. 3 months. She looked at him. "Why didn't you?" She stopped. Because it was obvious. Actually, why he hadn't. She had been engaged to Connor for 4 months. 3 months ago, she had still been choosing centerpieces. "You didn't know if I was part of it." Dominic said nothing. "You suspected I might be complicit." She heard herself say it out loud and felt something clarify. The way cold water clarifies. "You didn't know if I knew about the accounts. You didn't know if Connor had told me." "I knew you had studied law," he said. "I knew the accounts existed because I made it my business to know what Connor was doing when he started missing payments. I knew your name. I did not know your character. And now," he looked at her in the particular way he had looked at her since she walked into that gallery hall and kissed him, as if she was a variable that had just done something interesting, as if she was the part of the equation that kept solving differently than predicted. "Now," he said, "I have a reasonable opinion. That's not exactly comforting. I'm not trying to comfort you. What are you trying to do?" He set his glass down again, this time on the table between them, and sat finally in the other chair. And the shift in the room when he dropped to her level was subtle and enormous at the same time, like a barometric pressure change. "I'm trying," he said, "to figure out how to keep a civilian out of a situation that has become, tonight, considerably more public and therefore considerably more dangerous. The people Connor owes are watching. What happened in that gallery hall will reach them, and their reading of what happened will be that you have chosen sides. Maya stared at him. I kissed you because I was upset. I know that. I didn't know who you were. I know that too. But they'll think you traded up, he said, and there was nothing in his voice. Not irony, not amusement, not cruelty, just the flat delivery of a man stating weather conditions. They'll think you found out about the accounts and went to the most powerful man in the room. They'll think you're trying to destabilize Connor's position, and depending on which of their interpretations they land on, they will either try to use you as leverage again, or they will decide you're a liability they need to remove. The crack in Maya's chest had stopped being about Connor and Lily. It had become something else, something colder and more structural. So what do I do? She said. Tonight, Dominic said. You go back to the party. You are composed. You say nothing about what you saw in that corridor, and nothing about what I've told you here. You smile at your fiancé, and you make it through the end of the evening, and tomorrow morning, before 9 o'clock, you call me. He reached into his jacket pocket, the practiced reach of someone who never fumbles for any, and set a card on the table. Just a phone number. No name. She picked it up. And if I don't, she asked, then I suggest you make other arrangements very quickly. Maya looked at the card, then at him. He was already standing again. The conversation apparently concluded from his side. Jacket perfectly unruffled. The room exactly as ordered as when they'd entered. You knew my name before I said it, she said. Tonight, when I kissed you. He had reached the door. He paused, not turning fully, just enough. Yes, he said. How long have you known who I was? A beat. Not hesitation. Dominic Voss did not appear to hesitate, but a calibration. Long enough, he said. He opened the door and the noise of the party rolled in, warm and completely wrong. Maya sat in the private room for another 3 minutes, alone, the card between her fingers, and thought about what long enough might mean in the mouth of a man who had, apparently, have been watching her before she ever knew he existed. Then she stood up, smoothed her dress, and went back to the party. She found Connor near the bar, a glass in each hand, smiling the specific smile he used when he was relieved. He handed her one of the glasses. There you are, he said. I was looking for you. I needed some air, she said. You okay? She looked at him, at the man she had been going to marry, who had her sister's lipstick on his collar if you knew where to look, who had been offering her father's money to people who did not accept repayment plans, and smiled. I'm fine, she said. Let's enjoy the party. She did not look for Lily. She did not look for Dominic. She stood next to Connor for the rest of the evening with her back very straight and her face very still and her hand not quite touching his arm. And she thought about accounts she hadn't known existed, and a card with a phone number, and a man who had known her name before she walked into that gallery hall. Later, when she replayed it, and she would replay it many times. In the weeks that followed, the thing that stayed with her was not the moment she kissed him. It was the moment after, when he had turned to look at her, unhurried, as if her arrival was not a surprise but a schedule, as if he had been waiting, and she had simply finally showed up. She did not call at 9 in the morning. She called at 8:47, standing in the kitchen of her apartment in Lincoln Park, still in the clothes from last night, and he picked up on the second ring. Good morning, Maya, he said, and whatever she had been about to say dissolved, because somehow the steadiness of his voice, 3 words, her name, nothing alarmed, nothing dramatic, as if women called him from their previous night's clothes every morning, made the crack in her chest slightly less structural for just a second, just 1 second. Then she pulled it back together and said, tell me everything. The penthouse occupied the 43rd and 44th floors of a building in River North that did not advertise its amenities. There was no doorman who greeted you by name, no lobby art chosen to impress. No architectural gesture toward wealth of the performative kind. The building simply rose above the street with the unconcerned confidence of something that had never needed to prove itself to anyone passing below. Maya stood in the elevator with a single overnight bag and the specific sensation of someone who has made an irreversible decision and is only now, on the ride up, calculating its weight. She had not agreed to this easily. The conversation after her 8:47 call had lasted almost 2 hours, conducted while she sat on her kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet beneath the sink because at some point she had stopped being able to stand. And Dominic had spoken in the even, unspectacular tone of someone reading a map rather than delivering terrible news. Connor owed $350,000 to a group operating under a logistics company on the city's east side. The accounts in Maya's name opened in a trust by her father when she was 19, largely forgotten by her as adult life accreted over them, held enough to cover it. And then some. Connor had provided documentation that suggested he had power of attorney over those accounts. He did not. The documentation was forged. He had been buying time with it for 4 months, approximately as long as he and Maya had been engaged. She had asked Dominic how he knew all of this. He had said, "I make it my business to know what people who work adjacent to my operations are doing." She had asked what adjacent meant. He had said, "Connor runs money for several organizations in this city. I am one of them." She had absorbed this with the strange calm that had settled over her sometime around 2 in the morning, when she had finally accepted that the life she was standing in was not the life she had thought she was standing in, and that grieving the old one would have to wait. He had proposed, not suggested, not offered, proposed, in the specific tone of someone presenting a logistical solution that she come to the penthouse for the time being, not as a prisoner, he had said, before she could say it. As a practical matter, the organization Connor owed would have people watching her apartment within 48 hours. They would not touch her if they believed she was under his protection. And if she was not under his protection, the calculation became more complicated. She had said no, clearly, immediately, in the tone she used for final answers. She had called her best friend, Priya, who had been calling since 10 the night before. She had called her father, who did not yet know about the accounts, and who she had to explain, in careful pieces, like someone disassembling a mechanism so it didn't go off, that there was a problem with some old paperwork and she was handling it. She had sat with her laptop open for 3 hours, going through every financial document she had ever signed in the vicinity of Connor Voss. Then, at 11:37 that night, a black sedan had followed her home from the grocery store, not with any attempt at concealment, just a steady presence, 2 car lengths back, that didn't turn when she turned until 1 block before her building, where it pulled over and waited. She had called the number on the card. "There's a car outside," she said. "I know," he said. "Are you packed?" The elevator opened directly into the penthouse's main floor, which meant there was no hallway to soften the arrival. It was simply suddenly there, a space that ran the full width of the building, glass on 2 sides. The city spread out below like something that had been arranged for viewing purposes. The furniture was the color of ash and charcoal and raw linen. Everything was horizontal, low-set, uncluttered in a way that suggested not emptiness but a very deliberate editing down of everything unnecessary. A woman was in the kitchen when Maya stepped out of the elevator, mid-50s, silver hair, cut close, a posture that suggested she had never leaned on anything in her life. "Miss Reeves," she said, without particular warmth or coldness. "I'm Helen. I manage the household. Your room is the 3rd door on the left. Mr. Voss is in his study. He'll find you when he's ready." "Will he?" Maya said. "He always does," Helen said, and returned to whatever she had been doing, which appeared to be very precise and did not require Maya's input. Her room was not a guest room, or rather, it was a guest room that had been converted. with a speed that suggested it had been anticipated, into something habitable for longer than a weekend. The closet had empty hangers. The bedside table had been cleared. There was a small desk by the window that looked out over the river, a chair beside it, and a lamp that was the exact degree of warmth that made working at night bearable. Maya stood in the doorway for a moment, reassessing something she hadn't been fully assessing before. He had been ready for her before she called. He found her, as Helen had promised, approximately 40 minutes later, while she was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window in the main room, watching the city light itself against the dark. "You unpacked," he said. "I decided if I was going to be here, I might as well be here." She turned. He was in different clothes than the night before, darker, simpler. A shirt that was rolled to the elbows in a way that suggested a long evening of actual work. "I have conditions. You mentioned, I'm not your guest. I'm not your employee. And I am not whatever the narrative in that ballroom has decided I am. I stay here because it is temporarily the safest option. I come and go as I need to. And I want a real explanation." She held up one hand before he could reroute her, not logistics. "I want to know what Connor specifically told them about me. Not the accounts. What he said about who I am and what I know." Dominic looked at her for a moment in the particular way he had, the look that felt less like observation and more like calculation. "All right," he said. "All right, that's an agreement. Or all right, that's a deflection. All right, that's an agreement." He moved toward the kitchen, not a kitchen in the domestic sense, a kitchen in the industrial catering sense. All stone and precision, and began making coffee with the automatic efficiency of someone who has spent a lot of time alone in rooms where no one is going to do it for them. "Connor told them you were aware of the accounts and were managing access. He told them you were a willing participant in the arrangement. He used your law school enrollment as evidence of your financial literacy and implied that the reason you left was because you had found more lucrative application for it." Maya stood very still. "He told them I was helping him." "Yes. So they don't just think I'm collateral, they think I'm complicit. When you kissed me at the party," Dominic said, back still turned. Coffee, proceeding with the quiet precision of an experiment. "They revised their theory. They now believe you were working with me. Not Connor. That you identified the risk to yourself and moved to the more powerful protector, which is insane, which is rational. If you were the person they believe you to be." He turned with 2 cups and set one on the kitchen island in front of where she had drifted without noticing. "The problem is that either version of you, the one working with Connor, or the one who switched to Mize, a person they want to neutralize before this situation resolves. And the actual version of me, the actual version of you kissed a stranger at her own engagement party because she was hurt and angry and didn't have a better idea." He said it without inflection, without cruelty, without anything that could be mistaken for mockery, just the flat statement of a fact he had apparently integrated without judgment. "That version of you is the one I'm attempting to keep out of this." Maya picked up the coffee. It was black, and she usually took it with milk, but she didn't say so. "Why?" she said. "Because you're not a part of this. And I don't," he paused. "The slightest calibration. Allow collateral damage in my vicinity when I can prevent it. Is that a professional position? Consider it a policy." She looked at him across the kitchen island in the 43rd floor penthouse of a building that didn't need to advertise. With the city laid out below them and the coffee too strong and the room full of a silence she was starting to understand was not cold, but simply careful, and thought, "He is absolutely not going to tell me everything. Not yet. Possibly not ever." And she was going to have to decide how much that cost her. "Okay," she said. "Tell me about the organization Connor owes." "Everything you know," he told her. It was 3 in the morning before they stopped talking. The next 6 days had a specific texture, careful at the edges, charged in the center, shot through with the constant low-level tension of a situation that had not resolved and was not going to resolve quickly. Maya set up a workspace at the desk in her room the first morning. She called her firm she was a paralegal, had been for 2 years since leaving law school, and her supervisor was understanding in the way people are when they don't yet know how long the understanding will need to last. She worked remotely. She called Priya every afternoon and gave her updates that were truthful but not complete, because Priya would worry. And worrying was not something Maya had the bandwidth to manage on someone else's behalf right now. She did not call Lily. Lily called her, twice on the first day, once on the second, then stopped. Maya watched the calls come in and didn't answer, and felt the specific compound grief of someone losing 2 things at once, the fiancé and the sister. The betrayal doubled back on itself and set it aside with the careful efficiency she was applying to everything she could not currently afford to feel. Dominic was not a presence in the constant sense. He was in the apartment early and often came back late, and in between there were hours when she didn't see him at all. But there were meals not mandatory, not gestured at with obligation, simply there at reasonable intervals, because Helen cooked for the household, and the household now included Maya. She ate dinner at the kitchen island 3 times in that first week before she understood that Dominic tended to eat there too, standing or sitting on a stool, eating with the economical focus of someone who treats food as maintenance, and that their dinners together had not been engineered but had simply emerged from 2 people keeping the same hours. "You left law school," he said on the 3rd night. Not an accusation, a fact he was examining. 2 years in, she said. "I ran out of funding and didn't want to take on more debt and told myself I'd go back." She cut a piece of whatever Helen had left, something with roasted carrots and a sauce that made the whole floor smell good. "I didn't go back. Why law? My father is a contractor, not criminal," she added, and something that might have been a shift in his expression said he'd noted the distinction. Building contractor. He had a partner who cheated him out of about $100,000 when I was 13. There was a legal dispute. He lost. I watched him not understand the paperwork and not be able to afford someone who could explain it, and I thought someone should be able to do this. She paused. "It sounds very after-school special when I say it out loud." "It sounds like a reason," he said. "Not many people have those." "What was yours?" She looked at him. "For whatever it is you do." A silence that had weight to it. "My father built something," he said. "I was left it. I've spent 20 years keeping it from collapsing on the people who work in it." "That's a reason too," she said. He looked at her over the kitchen island with those evaluating eyes and said nothing, and she understood that was all she was going to get tonight, and found, to her own mild surprise, that it was enough. It was the 5th night when she woke up at 2 in the morning and couldn't go back to sleep, and drifted out of her room and into the main floor and found Dominic standing at the window, not pacing, not doing anything, simply standing, looking down at the city the way he had been looking the night they met. And Maya stopped in the corridor and watched him for a moment, because it was the first time she had seen him without the controlled surface on, and what was underneath it was not what she had expected. He looked tired, not the tired of a bad night, but the tired of a long time, the bone-specific exhaustion of someone who has been holding something up for years and is standing here in the dark because they needed to. Put it down, just for a second, somewhere no one would see. She must have made a sound because he turned. "Can't sleep," he said. "No." She came further into the room, pulled the throw from the back of the couch, sat on the couch, with her legs tucked under her. I don't sleep much." He turned back to the window. The city was still doing its nighttime things, lights blinking, distant traffic, a helicopter drifting north. "My brother used to say I'd outlive everyone I knew because I didn't waste time unconscious." She waited. He had not talked about his brother before. "He died," Dominic said. 11 years ago. Someone he trusted made a decision he wasn't told about, and he was in the wrong place when the consequences arrived. Maya sat with this. "I'm sorry," she said. "I took over from him. His voice had not changed in temperature or pace, but something in it had opened slightly. The way a door opens when you press the mechanism right. Not flung, just eased. He was better at it than I am. Fiancé could walk into a room full of people who hated him and leave with them wanting to help him. I can't do that. A pause. I can walk into a room full of people who are afraid of me and leave them more afraid. It's not the same skill. It's useful, though, Maya said. It's useful, he agreed. It's not the one I wanted. She sat in the dark with him for a while, not talking, the city below them doing its insomnia work, and thought about the thing he had said in the car the first night. The statement that had arrived with no context, my brother trusted the wrong person. And I don't make the same mistake twice. Who was it? She said. Who he trusted wrong. Dominic was quiet for a long time. Someone who worked with him for years, he said finally. Someone he thought was loyal because they'd never given him reason to think otherwise. Another pause. That's the most dangerous kind of betrayal. Not the obvious kind. The kind you can't see coming because you haven't let yourself look. Maya thought about Connor. About 4 months of signs she had processed and filed under other explanations, the late nights, the calls he took in other rooms, the way he looked at Lily sometimes. Signs she had not allowed herself to look at because she had decided to trust him. And trusting someone meant not looking. I understand that, she said quietly. He turned from the window, in the dark, with the city behind him. She couldn't read his expression. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow we're going to talk about what Connor actually holds in writing. And I need you sharp. Is that your version of a good night? That's my version of, I noticed you're not all right, and I don't know what to do about it. She stared at him. He moved toward the corridor to his room, unhurried, the same controlled stillness. But at the edge of the main room he stopped, without turning the coffee in the morning. You add milk. I'll tell Helen. He was gone before she could answer. She sat in the dark for another few minutes, the throw around her shoulders, and thought about the fact that he had noticed, that he had been watching her closely enough, in the margins of their careful, contained household arrangement, to notice that she added milk to her coffee. The city did not provide any useful commentary on this. She went back to bed. Connor called on the 6th day. She had been expecting it. He'd had 6 days to recalibrate, to perform wounded confusion to their mutual social circle, to let the story of the engagement party settle into the version that worked best for him. His name on her phone screen felt like a hand trying a door it had decided shouldn't be locked. She answered. Maya, he said, and his voice had that specific register warm, slightly strained, the voice of a man who believes himself to be the wronged party in a situation he created. I've been trying to reach you. I know. Where are you? Somewhere safe, she said. A pause. She could hear him deciding how to play this. I heard something, he said, about you and my uncle. I don't know what happened that night, Maya, but I think we need to talk. I think there are things. Connor, she said. I saw you and Lily. In the corridor. I know exactly what I saw. Silence. I also know about the accounts, she said, and the documentation, and the people you've been assuring with my name. The silence changed quality. Whoever told you, he started. I found out, she said, which was true. Dominic had been the one to confirm it, but she would have found it herself eventually. She had been in those accounts for 3 days now, and the timeline of access attempts was visible if you knew what to look for. And she was starting to remember why she had wanted to be a lawyer. I want you to listen carefully. Connor, I am not coming back. There will be no reconciliation. There will be no wedding. And if you contact me again without going through my attorney, I will be discussing those forged documents with the appropriate people. She hung up. Her hands were not shaking. She looked at them, slightly surprised, and thought, good. There you are. Then her phone lit up with a text from a number she didn't recognize, and the message was a photograph the gallery hall. The night of the party. She and Dominic in the moment of the kiss. Taken from somewhere behind them. The angle of someone who had been positioned there on purpose, and beneath it, 4 words. You have until Friday. Lily's apartment was in Wicker Park, on the 3rd floor of a building that still had its original 1920s molding and a buzzer system that didn't always work. Maya had been there 100 times. She knew the creak on the 7th step, the neighbor on the 2nd floor who kept a bike in the hallway, the way Lily's apartment smelled of her specific brand of diffuser and the coffee she always left running too long. She did not go there. She almost did. On the morning of the 8th day, standing in the kitchen of the penthouse while Helen moved around her with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned to work around stationary people, Maya had thought about what Lily's face would look like when she opened the door, whether she would try to explain, whether the explanation would be the kind that could be received, or the kind that just needed to be said. She decided to wait, not because she wasn't ready, but because she needed to understand what she was dealing with before she gave Lily the opportunity to warn Connor. She did not tell Dominic about the photograph. She did not tell him for 2 days, which was exactly as long as it took her to attempt to trace the number, fail, run the image through every reverse image tool she had access to, fail again, and arrive at the conclusion that she was going to have to either handle this alone or hand it over. She handed it over on a Tuesday evening, sliding her phone across the kitchen island while he was reading something on his laptop. He looked at it for 4 seconds. He did not say anything immediately, which she was learning was its own form of speech, the silence, that meant he was cataloging rather than reacting. "When did you get this?" he said. "The night after I called Connor." He looked up from the phone. "You waited 2 days. I was trying to handle it myself." By tracing the number. He looked at her with an expression she was starting to recognize, the one where she had done something he hadn't predicted, and he was deciding whether to tell her it was inadvisable or simply acknowledge that it was characteristic. "And," he said, "dead end. Burner. Probably a relay." She reached across and took her phone back. "What does Friday mean to them?" "It means they've given Connor until the end of the business week to either deliver or demonstrate progress. He clearly doesn't have it. He's now attempting to pressure you directly to see if you'll do what he needs." He closed his laptop. He can't afford them to know his collateral is no longer available to him. "Because I'm here. Because you know. Knowing changes your utility from asset to liability." Maya sat with this. Outside, the city was doing its grey Tuesday things, a low sky pressing down on the river, a cargo barge moving at the pace of something that had decided the destination could wait. She had been here over a week. She had learned that this high up you could hear the wind in a way that was almost conversational, pressing against the glass like something checking whether you were home. "I need to call Lily," she said. "Maya, not to warn her off. I need to know what she knows." She looked at him. "She's been with Connor. If he's told her if she knows about the accounts, about Friday, about any of it, then either she's at risk or she's part of it. And I need to know which before this gets to a point where I can't ask her." A long pause. He was doing the calculation she could almost see running behind his eyes, the risk of her making outside contact, the information value, the variables he couldn't fully control. "Not alone," he said. "I wasn't planning to go alone." She looked at him evenly. "I was going to ask if you had someone who could be nearby." He nodded once. "When?" "Thursday. Before Friday becomes something." "All right," he said. The brunch invitation arrived from Lily on Wednesday afternoon, and it was so precisely timed that Maya spent the first 5 minutes after receiving it, convincing herself it was coincidence before accepting that it wasn't. The message read, "I know you're probably not ready to see me, but I miss you, and I'm sorry, and I really think if we could just talk in person, in a neutral place, we could find a way through this. There's a place in Lincoln Square we used to go. Sunday brunch. I love you. Whatever you think right now, I love you." Maya stared at it. Lily had never, in 31 years of sisterhood, opened an apology with the preemptive management of Maya's emotional state. She had never framed her own wrongdoing as something for Maya to find a way through. The message was in Lily's diction. She recognized the run-on energy, the anxiety, but the architecture of it was someone else's. She showed it to Dominic. He read it once. "Don't go Sunday," he said. "I'm going Thursday," she said. "To Lily's apartment, not to the brunch she planned. She'll have told Connor you're meeting, probably. But Lily's apartment is her space. She's different there." Maya set the phone down. "She's braver there, and I need her brave." He looked at her for a long moment. "You know your sister," he said. "I know my sister," she agreed, and tried not to notice that this was the first time since the party that she had said that with something other than grief underneath it. Lily opened the door in the kind of outfit that meant she had been home all day, which meant she hadn't known Maya was coming, which told Maya a great deal. Maya. Her sister's face did something complicated, relief and guilt, and the specific expression of someone who has been rehearsing a conversation and now has to begin it without warning. Where are you staying? Connor said. "You just..." "Can I come in?" Maya said. Lily stepped back. The apartment was the same. The diffuser, the coffee running too long, the plant on the windowsill that had been dying since last spring and had apparently decided to stick around out of stubbornness. Lily's reading glasses on the kitchen table, a half-eaten piece of toast. Maya sat in the chair she always sat in. Lily sat on the couch. Between them, the coffee table with its permanent ring from a mug that had lived there 2 years ago, and the careful geography of two people who know each other too well for small talk, but have too much to say to start anywhere logical. "How long?" Maya said. Lily looked at her hands. 6 months. 6 months. They had been engaged for 4. The timeline unspooled with a specific ugliness. "He proposed to me while he was sleeping with you." Yes. The word was small and exactly the right size for what it was holding. "Did you know," Maya said, "about the money, the accounts, what he was doing with my name?" Lily looked up. Her expression changed, a confusion that seemed genuine enough to be the real thing, not a performed version. "What accounts?" Maya studied her. She had watched Lily lie since they were 7 years old, had a catalogue of Lily's tells. The way her left shoulder dropped, the way she looked to the right when she was manufacturing, the specific flatness that came into her voice when she was managing truth. None of those things were happening right now. Lily was looking at her straight on, both shoulders level, with the particular exhaustion of someone who is too tired to lie anymore. "He's been using my father's accounts," Maya said. "Documents forged with my signature. He told people I was helping him." Lily went pale, the kind of pale that starts in the lips and moves outward. "What people?" "People he owes money to." Maya watched her. "Lily, did you know?" "No. Firm. Immediate." "Maya, I swear to you I knew he had financial problems. He said it was temporary. He said he was handling it. He wouldn't tell me details. He always said I didn't need to worry about business things. I thought he was just..." She stopped, pressed a hand over her mouth. "How bad is it?" "He owes $350,000 to people who have sent me photographs and Friday deadlines." Lily stood up and walked to her kitchen window and stood there, and Maya could see her processing it the way Maya herself had processed things, in the careful stage-by-stage way people do when they are trying to accommodate a reality that doesn't fit. "He told me you'd gone to Dominic on purpose," Lily said, her back still to Maya. "He said you'd found out about the business problems and gone to his uncle to get leverage over him. He said the whole engagement party thing was planned. I kissed Dominic because I'd just seen you two and I was in shock." Lily turned. Her face was doing something that Maya recognized as the precursor to actual honesty, the expression her sister wore when all the management was gone and there was just the thing underneath. "I know," she said. "I know you didn't. I told him that, but he needed a story that..." She stopped again. "A story that made me the villain," Maya said. a story that kept his timeline together. Lily sat back down. He needs you back. Maya, he needs you to appear to be still engaged to him. Long enough to, I don't know. He wouldn't tell me all of it. He just kept saying if you came back for 2 more weeks, everything would be resolved. He wants to use the appearance of our reconciliation to buy more time with the people he owes. He didn't say that. It's what it means. Maya looked at her sister, at Lily, who was 31 and had never not been in Maya's life, who had taught her to apply eyeliner in the bathroom mirror of their childhood apartment, who had told her at 15 that she was smarter than she was performing and needed to stop pretending otherwise, who had been sleeping with her fiancé for 6 months. I need you to understand something, Maya said carefully. I'm not here to fight with you. I'm not ready for whatever comes after this, between us. But right now there's something more immediate than how I feel about what you did. Connor is in trouble that is going to become my trouble and possibly yours, and I need you to tell me everything he's told you. Every detail, every name, every conversation, every time he mentioned money or problems or arrangements. She held Lily's eyes. Not for him, for you, so that if this goes sideways, you're not standing in the middle of it without knowing what it is. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, how much danger are we in? I'm working on the answer to that question, Maya said. But I need your information to get there, Lily told her. It took 40 minutes and 2 cups of coffee that got cold before anyone touched them, and one moment in the middle where Lily stopped and said, I'm sorry. Maya, I'm so sorry. And Maya said, I know. And they sat with it for exactly 3 seconds before continuing, because there wasn't time to go further in, and they both understood this. Sisters who had been navigating timing since childhood. By the time Maya stood to leave, she had 3 names Connor had mentioned in Lily's presence, a partial description of the logistics company, and the knowledge that Connor had been to a meeting in a warehouse on the east side twice in the last month. She also had the knowledge that Lily had not known about the accounts. She stood at the door. Lily stood in the kitchen doorway, arms around herself, smaller than usual. Are you safe? Lily asked. Wherever you are. Yes, Maya said. Is it with him, Dominic Voss? Yes. Something moved across Lily's face. He's dangerous. Maya, I know what he is. She held her sister's eyes. I know what I'm doing. Lily looked at her for a long moaned, really looked. In the way sisters look when they're gauging not what you're saying, but what you've become since they last saw you clearly. You do, she said. Don't you? Not a question. Maya left. The car that Dominic had sent a silver SUV with a man named Eric, who did not introduce himself but held the door was, waiting at the end of the block. She got in. She texted Dominic 3 names to cross-reference. Warehouse details. Lily doesn't know about accounts. Not complicit, he replied in under 2 minutes. Good. Come up when you're back. She sat in the back of the car while Chicago moved past the windows and thought about what Lily had said you do. Don't you, and realized that she did. She knew what she was doing. She had walked into this building with an overnight bag and a card with a phone number and had been systematically, methodically, in the spaces between grief and adaptation, building an understanding of exactly what she was standing in. That felt, to her own surprise, like something. Dominic was still at his desk when she got back, which meant he had been there most of the day. She was learning his rhythms the way you learn a room in low light, by accumulation rather than direct examination. He looked up when she came in, and she relayed the conversation with efficiency, hitting the useful pieces, and he listened with the stillness of someone who would ask exactly one question at the end. He asked, "What did she say about the warehouse timing?" Maya told him. He typed something briefly and then said, "Good work." She almost laughed, not unkindly. "Good work," she repeated. "Am I getting a performance review?" Something crossed his face so quickly she almost missed it, but it was there, and it was warmer than anything she'd seen from him in low-lit clarity. something that in another context would have been the edge of a smile. You extracted useful intelligence from an emotionally compromised source without compromising the source, he said. It's a skill most people don't have. She's my sister, Maya said. I've been doing it since we were 8. I know. He looked at her. That's what makes it a skill. She stood there in the room that had the low horizontal furniture and the two-sided glass and the city arranged below for viewing, and something that had been tight in her chest for 9 days loosened very slightly, a fraction of a degree, in a direction she didn't entirely examine yet. Her phone lit up, a text from Lily. She almost didn't read it immediately, but something in the rhythm of the notification double, the kind Lily sent when she was trying to reach her, quickly made her look. First message: he was here 10 minutes after you left. Second message: Maya, he knows you came to see me. He was asking what you said. She showed it to Dominic. He read it, and the controlled surface that she had learned to read like a second language told her, very quietly, that this was worse than he had expected. He had her apartment watched, she said, or followed you. His jaw was set at a specific angle that meant he was already 6 steps ahead. Either way, he knows you've been in contact with Lily and that you came alone. I wasn't alone. Eric was outside. Eric doesn't advertise that. He stood, and the movement had a decision in it, the kind of forward lean that meant the next several hours were going to be active rather than considered. We need to move the timeline. What timeline? Getting ahead of Friday. He was already reaching for his phone. The warehouse. When Connor was there the second time, 2 Saturdays ago. Right. He dialed something, turned half away, spoke quietly and efficiently in a register she had learned not to try to follow. When he turned back, what I'm about to do will limit Connor's options significantly. It will also mean we need to be ready to move quickly once the pressure increases. I need you to stay in the building tomorrow. I'm a paralegal, she said, not a chess piece. I'm aware. He looked at her, and there it was again, that quality of being actually seen, the way she had first registered it in the private room at the Whitmore, the sense of being processed as a person rather than a variable. I'm asking you to stay in the building tomorrow because the risk assessment for your being outside tomorrow is higher than it was today, and I'd like to reduce your exposure while I work. That's a request, not an instruction. Maya held his eyes for a moment. How many times in your life, she said, have you made a request rather than an instruction? The warmth moved through his expression again. Faster this time, but she caught it. Twice, he said, maybe 3 times. And the other times, I own the building, he said, and turned back to his desk. And Maya thought, there it is, the reason the city runs quiet around him, the reason rooms go cold when he enters, the reason Connor had been afraid to tell the truth for 4 months while his deadline counted down. She also thought he asked me. She stayed in the building the next day. The thing she hadn't accounted for in any version of how this would gouge the dinner they had that Friday evening, which should have been a deadline day for Connor's creditors and turned out to be a specific kind of quiet instead. Dominic had done something. She didn't know the full shape of it yet, but the calls had been fewer, and the atmosphere in the penthouse had shifted from the low-grade pressure of a waiting room to something slightly more like, the period after the test is turned in, uncertain but no longer imminent. He had told her he had bought more time. She had not pressed for details because she had learned that details from Dominic Voss arrived on his schedule and not before, and that pushing for them only made the schedule longer. Helen had made something with pasta and a cream sauce that was so contrary to everything the penthouse communicated aesthetically that Maya had laughed when she saw it on the stove, an actual laugh, short and surprised. And Dominic had said, from somewhere behind her, Helen cooks what she wants. Helen should be running a restaurant. Helen ran 3, he said. She prefers this. They ate at the kitchen island, outside. The city was doing its Friday things, the energy shift of the week's end. Lights in other buildings suggesting parties and dinners and uncomplicated evenings. Maya ate and felt, for a specific and temporary moment, something almost like calm. "Tell me about the people you work with," she said. "Not the family, the people in the organization." He looked at her. "Why?" "Because I've been here 11 days and I still only understand the structure from the outside. I understand it as threat, not as thing. What it actually is." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There are about 40 people who work directly for the Voss organization. Not soldiers, not operatives in the way people imagine, mostly logistics, finance, legal edge cases. People who understand that some things operate outside the systems everyone else uses, and who have chosen that rather than been forced into it. A pause. My brother built it that way. He believed that loyalty you buy is worth less than loyalty you build. I've kept to that. But Connor is my brother's son." His voice had a specific flatness in it on those words, not the absence of feeling, but the covering of it. "I gave him more chances than I would have given anyone else. That's my mistake, not his." Maya set down her fork. "He doesn't deserve the coverage you're giving him." "No," Dominic said. "He doesn't." "Then why?" He looked at her across the kitchen island, in the apartment that she had been sleeping in for 11 days, in the city that neither of them was going anywhere, and said, "Because he's the last thing I have that belongs to my brother, and I'm aware that that is not a good reason. I'm also aware that I haven't been able to talk myself out of it." The honesty of it landed differently than his usual register, not softer. Not warmer. Dominic Voss, at his most unguarded, was still cooler than most men at their warmest, but honest in a way that was almost startling given the controlled surfaces she had been navigating for 11 days. She didn't say anything. She thought about the brother he had described in the dark 2 weeks ago, the one who could walk into rooms and come out with allies, the one whose loyalty had been killed by the wrong person trusted. She thought about what it would cost to watch the next generation make the same mistakes and keep showing up anyway. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," he said. "I chose this." She was about to say something else when her phone lit up on the counter. Not a call. A notification from an app she hadn't opened in days. A group chat from their mutual social circle. The people from the engagement party who were now doing the inevitable work of choosing sides and reallocating sympathies. But it wasn't that. It was a photograph someone had posted to a semi-public account, tagged in the group. The photo was from that night, not the gallery hall different. It was from outside the Whitmore, after the party. A street-level shot. Maya coming out of the hotel's side entrance with Dominic just behind her, his hand at the small of her back in the guiding but not quite touching way he had of indicating direction. The two of them moving in the same direction as if they were moving toward the same thing. Beneath the photograph, someone in the chat had written, "Is she serious right now? That's Dominic Voss." And someone else, "No wonder Connor is losing his mind." And then Priya, "Bless her. Leave her alone. She knows what she's doing." Maya stared at it. Then she set the phone face down on the counter. "What?" Dominic said. "Nothing." She picked her fork back up. "Social media archaeology." He looked at the phone, then at her. "The engagement party. Always the engagement party." She took a bite. "Apparently I'm now a woman of mystery." "You were always a woman of mystery," he said, and it was so unexpected, the lightness of it, from him, in this apartment. 11 days in that she looked up and found him looking back at her with something that wasn't quite a smile, but was closer than she had seen. 3 seconds. Then he said, "I need to tell you something about Thursday." Thursday, the warehouse, the names Lily had given her. "Tell me," she said. He told her about the meeting he had learned was being planned. Connor's creditors, reorganizing their approach. The information Lily had provided had confirmed what his people had been tracking. The warehouse was their contact point, and they were meeting there to decide what to do about a situation that had become, in their assessment, too public and too complicated. They wanted to close it out. "Close it out how?" Maya said. "That's what I'm working to determine," he said, and why Thursday was important, and why tomorrow is going to matter. She looked at him. What's happening tomorrow? There's a family event, he said. Not Voss family. A larger gathering, an annual thing that several organizations in this city attend, nominally as a business occasion, actually as a way to take stock of each other. He paused. Connor will be there. His creditors will be there. And it has been suggested to me, through several channels, that my appearing without addressing the current situation will be interpreted as an endorsement of whatever Connor is doing. So you need to go, she said, and address it. Yes. And you're telling me this because Connor is going to do something at this event, he said. I don't know what, but the pattern of his behavior in the last 2 weeks, the pressure on you, the photograph, the contact with Lily's preparing for something public, something that cements his version of the story before I can tell mine. He held her eyes. I wanted you to know. Maya set her fork down carefully. I could come, she said. No. If Connor is planning something public, having me there changes his. No. The flatness was complete. This is not a negotiation. Dominic, I'm not arguing about this. She looked at him across the kitchen island in the apartment that she had made temporarily habitable by unpacking 3 pairs of shoes and buying her own tea because Helen kept the wrong kind, and said, You don't get to just decide things for me. I can decide things about the safety of people in my organization. I'm not in your organization. No, he said, which is exactly why I'm not bringing you into the room where my organization handles its business. She wanted to fight this further. She had the sentences ready about agency, about being treated like information rather than a person, about the specific exhaustion of men deciding what was safest for her as a way of deciding things for her. But she looked at him and saw, in the set of his jaw and the stillness behind his eyes, not control but something closer to fear, controlled and compressed, and sitting behind the authority like something he was managing rather than something he was performing. He was afraid of something happening to her. She didn't say any of the sentences. Okay, she said. Okay, he said, and something in the room eased a degree. They finished dinner. Helen had left dessert something with chocolate that was also contrary to everything the penthouse communicated. Dominic looked at it with what Maya had learned to read as his version of appreciation, which looked to most people like acknowledgement. She was going to say goodnight. She was halfway to her hallway. Maya. She stopped. He didn't turn from the window where he had drifted while they ate, the city in the dark behind him. My brother trusted the wrong person, he said, because he thought longevity proved loyalty. He thought that if someone had been there long enough, they had earned it. A pause. I spent 10 years agreeing with him, and then I spent 11 years wondering if I had been trusting the wrong people for the same reason. She stood in the corridor entrance, waited. You've been here 11 days, he said. I know that's not long, but I think. He stopped, calibrated. I wanted to say that the way you handled Lily, the way you handled all of it. He turned, finally, and she couldn't fully see his face with the city light behind him. It mattered, to me, that you handled it the way you did. Maya stood very still. Good night, he said. Good night, she said. She went to her room and sat on the edge of the bed and thought about the fact that Dominic Voss, the most feared man in Chicago's organized underground, had just told her, in the careful oblique language of someone who hadn't said this kind of thing in a very long time, that she mattered to him. She thought about that for a while. Then she checked her phone and found a message from Lily. He went to the event. He's in a mood. Be careful, and knew that tomorrow was going to be something. Số từ 4, Liu bài sự chi. Phần 4. The call came at 11:43 on a Saturday morning, and it was not from Dominic. It was from an unknown number, and when Maya answered it, the woman on the other end said, This is Celeste Voss. I'm at the Carrington Club. You should be here. Maya sat up. Who are you? Dominic's cousin, his father's sister's daughter. I'm telling you this because there's no time for context. A pause that had the sound of background noise moving through Itlo voices. The clink of something glassy. An indoor space with money in its walls. Connor is here. He's saying things about you, Miss Reeves, in a room full of people who will be deciding things in the next 2 hours, and Dominic is handling it the wrong way. What way is that? Silence. He's been silent about it, which, in this room, reads as confirmation of whatever Connor is saying. Another pause. Dominic told you not to come. He did. He tells everyone he loves not to put themselves in the way of things. Celeste said. He's done it so many times it's become a reflex, rather than a decision. Sometimes it's right. Today it is not. A beat. I'm telling you this because I have known my cousin for 40 years, and I know the difference between him protecting someone and him disappearing them from his life before anything can go wrong. Today, he is protecting you, and you deserve to know that the protection isn't working. The line was quiet for a moment. The Carrington Club, Maya said. Where? She had not told Helen. She had texted Priya the address as a precaution if I'm not in contact by 3 p.m. Send Eric to this location and taken a cab, which felt both completely ordinary and slightly absurd given the last 12 days of her life. The Carrington Club was on the Gold Coast, the kind of building that communicated exclusion through architectural understatement. A townhouse front that gave no indication of the floor space behind it. The door was opened by a man who clearly knew who was expected and looked at Maya with a particular expression of someone revising a list. I'm with the Voss party, she said. He let her in. The interior was mid-century in a way that meant original rather than designed. Dark wood and low lighting, and the perpetual air of a room where serious things had been discussed for so long, the walls had simply absorbed it. She was directed to a side room, not the main event, and she moved through the periphery of what felt like a gathering organized around informal clusters rather than formal seating men and women in the attire of people who had arrived from their own significant contexts and were now doing the work of relating to each other. She found the tension before she found its source. It was in the way a group of 3 men near the fireplace had their posture angled toward one person standing slightly apart from them, and in the way the nearest clusters had the micro-awareness of people tracking something without appearing to watch. She followed the triangulation and found Connor. He looked, she thought, like a man who had decided to force a hand he wasn't holding. He was speaking in a low voice to the 3 men, and whatever he was saying had a controlled urgency that was the specific register of someone managing a narrative under time pressure. When he saw Maya, his expression went through several things in sequence: surprise, recalculation, and then a composed hostility that told her he had not expected her here and was not pleased. She walked toward him. The room did not stop its conversations, but the micro-awareness intensified. Maya, Connor said. Connor, she said. One of the 3 men 50s, grey at the temples. The kind of stillness that suggested he was listening to more than the conversation, looked at her with the particular attention of someone taking notes in real time. She understood, from the positioning and from the way Connor's posture had shifted slightly in his direction, that this was one of the people Connor owed, one of the people who had sent a photograph with a deadline. I didn't know you were coming, Connor said. I didn't know I was either, she said, until I heard what you were saying about me. The man with the grey temples said nothing. He was watching her the way she imagined. Naturalists watched newly discovered species with the patience of someone who was going to gather more information before deciding anything. I'm not saying anything about you, Connor said, the warm, strained voice again. The wronged party register. I was explaining the current situation to the people you told I was helping you. She looked at him clearly. The people you gave forged documentation to that used my name and my father's accounts. She turned to the grey-templed man and looked at him directly. My name is Maya Reeves. I have been Connor Voss's fiancé for 4 months. I was not aware of any arrangement between Connor and your organization. I did not agree to provide access to any accounts. The documentation he provided was forged, and I have the originals. Silence. Not the silence of a room, the specific silence of three men, recalibrating the terms of a situation they thought they had already understood. Miss Reeves, the grey-templed man said. His voice was even with the specific modulation of someone who had conducted negotiations in difficult rooms for a long time. That's a significant claim. I have documentation, she said. Access logs, timestamps, original signatures with notarization, predating Connor's supposed power of attorney by 6 years. I've spent 2 weeks preparing this because I was a law student before I was a paralegal, and I know how to build a file. Connor's jaw had done something. Maya, this isn't. I'm not finished. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the grey-templed man. Connor put my name on a deal I didn't make. The people who got hurt by that are you and me. I'm here because I want to make sure you understand that I am not party to his default, and that my father's accounts are not available to you, and that pursuing them would be pursuing something you cannot collect on. She paused. I'm also here because I'd rather have this conversation in person, with people who can weigh it, than continue to receive photographs. The photograph reference landed. She saw it in the micro-shift of the grey-templed man's expression, the slight recalibration that said he used our communication channel for a personal threat. That was not authorized, Connor said. You have no idea what you're doing. She seems to know exactly what she's doing. The voice came from behind her. She turned. Dominic stood at the entrance to the room. He had arrived without her hearing him, which was apparently a skill rather than an accident. He was looking at the group near the fireplace with the expression she had learned was his version of attention, the completely, terrifyingly even look of someone who has already decided where things are going and is simply waiting for the room to catch up. His eyes moved to her. One beat. Not surprise, Eji thought she would never again manage to fully surprise him, but something that moved in the back of his eyes like an acknowledgement, like a door being quietly unlatched. Then he looked at the grey-templed man and said, Riordan, we should talk. The man named Riordan looked from Dominic to Maya and back, and something resolved in his expression, not warmth, not friendliness, but the specific, practical respect of a man who had just discovered that the situation he thought he understood had additional architecture he hadn't mapped. Yes, he said. I think we should. Connor said, this is not her place. She doesn't have standing to. She has standing, Dominic said, because I've given her standing, which is something we've already discussed, and which you continue to not account for. He looked at Connor, and the look had 11 years of his brother's son in it, and 11 years of watching someone squander what had been built, and something that was, finally, clearly, done. Go home. Connor's face did something that was, underneath the composed hostility, something closer to scared. Uncle, go home, Dominic said. I'll reach you when this is settled. The room watched Connor Voss calculate whether to fight this and decide, with a precision that suggested this was genuinely the first intelligent decision he had made in months, not to. He adjusted his jacket. He looked at Maya with a gaze that was trying to be threatening and arriving at something more like cornered. This isn't over, he said to her. It is, she said. You should make your peace with that. He left. The room did the thing rooms do when the pressure front has passed a collective, micromanaged exhale. Conversations, resuming. Clusters slightly rearranged. Maya stood by the fireplace and felt the adrenaline of the last 15 minutes begin to metabolize, which meant she also felt the shaking that had been waiting to happen, and she kept very still so that it would stay internal. Dominic crossed to her. He stood in front of her and looked at her with the direct, specific attention he had been giving her since the night in the gallery hall. And she thought, okay, here, in front of people who are watching, this is where we are. You came, he said. "Your cousin called me." "I know." A pause. "Celeste is very opinionated." "She's also right." Maya looked at him. "You were handling it the wrong way." Something moved in his eyes. "I was handling it the way that keeps you out of a room full of people who—" "I know what you were doing," she said, "and I understand why. And I came anyway." She held his eyes. "Because you don't get to keep me out of rooms to protect me and then wonder why I don't know what's happening. You either trust me with the situation or you don't, but you can't do both." He was quiet. The room did its thing around them, people moving, conversations layering, and in the middle of it, he stood in front of her with the same stillness he had on that first night, by that window, waiting for something he had known was coming. "I know," he said. "Do you? I made a decision without telling you. I've been making decisions about your situation without fully consulting you since the night you called me about the car." His voice was even, but she could hear, under the evenness, something that cost him. "That's what I do. I manage things. I make the call. I've done it my entire adult life." And at another pause, "It's not appropriate with you." "No," she said. "It isn't. I'm working on it," he said. And it was such a simple sentence from such a controlled man that it landed with more weight than a declaration would have. Riordan appeared at Dominic's shoulder. "When you're ready," he said, with the courtesy of someone who could wait, but was choosing not to. Dominic nodded once, then looked back at Maya. "Stay in this room," he said. "Not a command. A request. I'll be 20 minutes. 20 minutes, she agreed. He went with Riordan. She stood by the fireplace and thought about everything that had just happened, the things she had said to Connor, to Riordan, the documentation she had been building for 2 weeks in the paralegal discipline she had thought she was keeping just in case, the 12 days of becoming someone who could walk into this room and say what she had said. She was not the person who had stood in a gallery hall and kissed a stranger out of pain. Or rather, she was still that person. But that person had, in 12 days, done a great deal of growing. Celeste appeared beside her. She was a small woman in her late 50s with a face that suggested she had seen most things and filed them where they were useful. "Well," she said, "you did that well. I had good material to work with." Maya said, "The documentation was Dominic's file." "I'm not talking about the documentation." Celeste looked at her sideways. "I'm talking about the way you stood in front of a man who makes much more powerful people nervous and told him the truth. That's not preparation. That's character." Maya looked at her. "Why did you call me?" Celeste was quiet for a moment. "Then, because my cousin has been protecting things from a distance since he lost his brother. He protects the organization from a distance. He protects the people who work for him from a distance. He held Connor at arm's length and called it family, and held me at arm's length and called it love." She paused. "And then you kissed him at an engagement party because you were hurt and human and not thinking strategically at all. And the look on his face in that gallery hall," she stopped. Something like fondness crossed her face. "I've known him for 40 years, Miss Reeves. I have never seen that look." Maya stood by the fireplace in the Carrington Club while the city continued to do its Saturday things outside, and thought about the look on a man's face that he didn't know another person had seen. "He needs to be less good at this," she said, "at protecting things, at doing it where I can't see it." Celeste looked at her with the direct evaluating look that was clearly a family trait. "You're going to be difficult for him," she said. "He's not used to difficult. He's the most feared man in this city. He's the most feared man in this city who doesn't know what to do when someone doesn't leave." Celeste straightened, which is new, and which is good for him, a beat, whether he admits that or not. Dominic's 20 minutes was actually 38, and when he came back his posture had the specific quality of a completed task. Something that had been requiring management was now under different management. He crossed to where Maya was standing, and the room observed this with the kind of subtle attention that tells you things matter in here. "Riordan," she said, "has agreed to a timeline that doesn't involve Friday, as a deadline. He said, Connor's obligation has been restructured. It doesn't involve your accounts. He looked at her. He was impressed by the file. Of course he was. It was thorough. It was thorough. He agreed. They stood by the fireplace in the room that had absorbed decades of difficult conversations, and something between them had the quality of a door that had been ajar for 12 days and had just opened 1 more inch. Dominic, she said. He waited. The night you moved the engagement party to the Whitmore, she watched his face. Celeste said you chose that venue. A pause that was not quite a hesitation but was closer than she had seen from him. I know several venues of that size, he said, but you chose that one. It has a layout I can secure efficiently. Yes, she said, and you requested the gallery hall remain reserved, which is why no one was in it when I walked through. His eyes held hers. Except you, she said. You were there. I was there, he confirmed. You were waiting. He looked at her for a long moment, and the thing behind his eyes that was always calculating, always managing, always running 3 steps ahead, did something she hadn't seen it do before. It stopped, just briefly, just long enough. I had a reasonable expectation, he said, that the evening was going to be difficult for you. I thought he stopped, restarted. I wanted to be somewhere you could find me, if you needed to. Maya Reeves, who had spent 12 days learning the language of a man who spoke almost entirely in understated acts rather than declared feelings, translated this without difficulty. He had staged an exit for her before she knew she needed one. She had found him, and he had been there, and the kiss that had started everything impulsive, grieving, not thinking had, landed on a man who had, apparently, already been thinking about her before she thought of him. How long? She said. You told me long enough. But how long? The room was doing its things around them. Celeste was somewhere to the left. Diplomatically, not looking. The grey-templed man Riordan was speaking to someone across the space with the ease of a situation that had been tidied. Dominic said the first time Connor mentioned you, 3 months ago. He said you had left law school because you were intimidated by the material. He said it flatly. The statement of a fact that had registered as wrong. He said it the way men say things about women to make themselves feel larger. He noted it. I looked into who you were. He paused. That's all I intended. To know what kind of person was connected to the situation I was monitoring. But you, he stopped again. The controlled man who never fumbled for words was fumbling, barely, in the specific, careful way of someone trying to say a true thing they have been not saying for a while. You didn't fit the category he put you in. You didn't fit any category I had, and I found that interesting, in a way I hadn't anticipated. Interesting, she repeated. Compelling, he said, in a way I did not act on. Because you were engaged to my nephew, and because I had no interest in being another man who made decisions about your life without your knowledge. She looked at him, until the gallery hall. Until you kissed me, he said, and I was faced with the choice of stepping back, which would have been appropriate, or not stepping back, which was what I actually did. And you chose not stepping back. I chose not stepping back. The room continued around them. The city continued outside. Somewhere in this city, Connor was going home to the situation he had built, and Lily was in her Wicker Park apartment, and Maya's father was doing his Saturday contractor things with no idea that his daughter had spent 12 days in a penthouse reconstructing the architecture of her own life. I need to know something, Maya said, and I need you to tell me the truth. I always tell you the truth, he said. You withhold the truth, she said. That's not the same as lying, but it's not the same as telling. A beat. He conceded this with a slight shift of his head. If none of this had happened, she said, the party, Connor, the accounts, all of it. If I had simply remained engaged and this situation hadn't blown open, would you have acted on it? On finding me interesting? He looked at her for a long time, The calculating stillness was back, but she understood now that it was not distance, it was the way he approached things that mattered, with the total, almost terrifying seriousness of someone who has never in his life said something he didn't mean. "No," he said. She nodded. "But I would have made sure you were all right," he said. "Whatever form that took, I would have found a way to make sure you were all right." She believed him. That was the thing she kept returning to. Across all 12 days of learning his language and his rhythms and his silences, she believed him, not uncritically. Not without the reservation of a woman who had trusted the wrong man for 4 months and was not going to repeat that particular mistake, but genuinely, in the way you believe things that have proven themselves in action rather than in word. He had been there. Before she knew she needed him, he had been there. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it automatically and then again, because the message was from Lily, and the message was wrong. They came to the apartment, not Connor. 2 of them. "Maya, I don't know where to go." She showed Dominic. He was already moving. The drive to Wicker Park took 11 minutes. Dominic drove himself, which she had not seen him do before. A black car that materialized outside the Carrington Club's side entrance with the speed of something that had been waiting rather than summoned. He drove with the focused economy of a man who makes every action into a precision task. And in the passenger seat, Maya kept her phone open to Lily's messages and relayed them as they came in. Still in the apartment. They're in the hallway. I locked the door. "Tell her to find the back stairwell," Dominic said. "Every building in that neighborhood has one. Service exit. End of the hall. Door she's probably never used." Maya texted it. 30 seconds. "There's a door at the end. I've never opened it. That's it. Tell her to go through and go down, not up." She sent it. Outside the windows, the city moved at the pace of a Saturday afternoon that didn't know it was supposed to hurry pedestrians. Storefronts. A woman with a stroller waiting for a light that was taking too long. Maya watched it all from somewhere slightly outside herself and thought about the 2 men in Lily's hallway, about what their presence meant, about the approximately 50 minutes that had passed since Connor left the Carrington Club. "Is this Riordan?" she said. "No." The flatness was complete. "Riordan doesn't move without telling me. He has too much to lose from breaking an agreement in the first hour." He turned onto Milwaukee, navigating the Saturday traffic with the contained attention of someone whose driving is an extension of the same controlled precision he applied to everything. This is Connor's play. He's out of time and out of options, and he's doing what people do when those 2 things happen at once. He's trying to pressure me through Lily. He's trying to establish that he still has leverage. Dominic's jaw was set at a specific angle she was learning to read, not anger, which was too imprecise a word for what happened in his expression when something required immediate correction, but something more deliberate. The look of a man closing a hand around something that has been sliding for too long. He doesn't. Her phone buzzed. "Going down." "Maya, I can hear them trying the door." "She's in the stairwell," Maya said. "They're trying the door." "How far down is she?" She texted, waited. "2nd floor landing. Tell her to keep going. Ground floor. Then out. She'll come out into the alley." The car turned into Wicker Park, and the neighborhood shifted around them, the specific texture of it. The old buildings and the coffee shops and the particular Saturday energy of a place that still believed in itself. Dominic pulled into the alley at the back of the block without hesitating, which told her he had already known it was there, had already mapped this, had been 3 steps ahead since the moment she showed him Lily's text. The back door of the building opened. Lily came through it in the clothes she'd been wearing when Maya visited. Keys, still in her hand. Her face, the specific white of someone whose adrenaline had been running hard for too long. She saw Maya through the windshield, and something in her expression broke and reformed in quick succession relief. And under it, the complicated grief of a person being rescued by the sister she had wronged. Dominic was already out of the car. He crossed to the door, said something brief to Lily, looked up at the building's back face for a moment, with the assessment of someone reading a situation from the outside, and then guided Lily to the back seat with a hand that didn't quite touch her elbow, the same not quite touch he used for direction, she had noticed. The gesture of a man who moves people without requiring them to feel moved. He got back in, started driving. "Are you hurt?" Maya turned in her seat. "No." Lily's voice was thin. "They didn't touch me. They were just standing there, not saying anything. That was the worst part. Just standing there. It's designed to be," Dominic said. "The silence is the message." Lily looked at him in the rearview mirror with the particular expression of someone recalibrating who they are riding in a car with. "You're Dominic Voss," she said. "Yes. Maya talks about you." A pause. "She doesn't say your name, but I know when she's talking about you." Something moved in the rearview mirror. Maya thought it might have been his eyes finding hers for one brief second before returning to the road. He made 3 calls on the drive back. Each was brief and efficient and conducted in the register of instructions rather than conversation, and Maya listened to enough to understand that Connor's location was being established, that certain access points were being closed, and that something that had been held in an open hand for a long time was finally being allowed to settle into its actual shape. When he hung up the 3rd time, Lily said, "From the back seat, what happens to him?" "Connor will be transitioned out of the organization," Dominic said. "Formally, the people he owes have agreed to restructured terms. He will not be in a position to use your sister's name or your family's finances again. And the men in my hallway are being dealt with." Lily absorbed this. "Then will he be safe, Connor? I mean," she said it with the specific exhaustion of someone who still cares about a person they know they shouldn't. The worst kind of caring. The kind that survives the evidence against it. "I know what he did. I'm not. I just need to know he won't be. He'll be safe," Dominic said. "That's a condition, not a courtesy." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, very quietly, "Thank you." Back at the penthouse, Helen produced food with the brisk practicality of a woman who understood that crises were improved by warm things set in front of people. And Lily sat at the kitchen island with both hands around a bowl of something that steamed, and the color came back into her face in slow degrees. Dominic excused himself. He had calls to make, he said, things to finalize, and he looked at Maya before he went with a look that was brief and said several things at once. "I'll be back." "You're all right." I know this is a lot in the compressed language of a man who had learned to carry meaning in small spaces. Maya sat across from her sister. The apartment was quiet around them. Outside, the city was doing its Saturday evening things, the light going amber and long. The kind of late afternoon light that makes even complicated days look like they might resolve. "I'm sorry," Lily said. It was the 3rd time she had said it. Each time it had a slightly different weight, as if she was finding the real version of it through repetition. The way you find the right word by saying the wrong ones first. "I know," Maya said. "I keep thinking about the card you made," Lily said. "At the party. The seating chart. You redid it 3 times. I know because you called me about the font." She looked at her coffee, and I was all ready. She stopped. "Yeah," Maya said. "I don't have a reason that makes it okay." "No," Maya said. "You don't." She looked at her sister across the kitchen island. "But I know you. I know who you are under what you did. And those aren't the same thing. What you did and who you are, even though they're connected." She paused. "I'm going to need time. I'm going to need you to give me time without asking how I'm doing with it. Can you do that?" Lily looked up. "Yes." "Good." Maya picked up her own cup. "And call Dad. Not about any of this. Just call him. He asks about you every time we talk." Something in Lily's face shifted, a softening, a grief that was different in texture from the guilt, something older. "He asks about you too," she said. "Every time." "I know." Maya said, "We're his kids. That's what he does." They sat in the kitchen of a penthouse that belonged to neither of them and felt, somehow, like the right place to be having this conversation somewhere outside the ordinary geography of their lives, somewhere that was temporarily nobody's territory, which made it easier to be honest in. Lily left 2 hours later a friend. A spare room, somewhere Connor didn't know about. She hugged Maya at the elevator, briefly and hard. The hug of sisters who have been doing it since childhood and don't need to make it into language. "Are you okay?" Lily said into her shoulder. "Getting there." Maya said, "Is he good to you?" Maya thought about the question, the full question, with all its weight. "He's learning how to be," she said, "and so am I. We're doing it at the same time, which is probably the only fair way." Lily pulled back and looked at her, the real look. "Okay," she said. "Yeah, okay." The elevator closed. The apartment went quiet. Helen had left for the night. The city outside was moving into its evening register lights coming on in other buildings, the particular stillness that settles on a Saturday when the afternoon's activity has resolved and the night hasn't quite started. Maya stood at the main room window for a while, watching it, letting the last several hours metabolize. She was still standing there when she heard him behind her. Dominic came into the main room and stopped when he saw her at the window, not with surprise, but with the particular quality of attention he brought to her specifically, the awareness that was different in texture from how he observed everything else. She had been noticing the difference for a while without naming it. Tonight she let herself name it. He came to stand beside her, not quite next to her, the usual careful distance. "Lily's gone," he said. "She's with a friend." Maya kept her eyes on the city. "She'll be okay." "Yes," he said, "she will." A beat of quiet. The city below was doing its patient evening work. Lights switching on in sequence as the darkness advanced. The lake, invisible from here but felt, the way you always feel large water near a city, even when you can't see it. "Tell me something," Maya said. "Ask it." "The meeting today. Before I arrived," she turned to look at him. "What were you going to do if I hadn't come? If Celeste hadn't called?" He considered this. "I was going to correct the record," he said. "Tell Riordan and the others that Connor had misrepresented your involvement. Present the documentation we had." A pause, and Connor was going to. He stopped. Connor was going to tell a version where you'd been a willing participant who had switched sides when you saw which way the wind was blowing. That version was better for him, easier to believe than the truth. "And without me there, it would have been my word against his," he said, "which is not a fight I would have lost, but it would have taken longer, and Connor would have had more time to." He paused. "To use. To use against me," she said. "To use against the situation," he said, "which included you." Maya looked at him, at the careful precision of it, the way he'd just navigated, that not protecting her from the truth, but protecting her from the specific weight of being named as the center of the problem. She was learning his grammar, the way he softened things by moving them 1 degree sideways, the way he took on weight without appearing to. "You were trying to handle it without putting me in the room," she said. "Yes. Because you didn't want me in a room with those people." "Yes. And if I'd asked you," she said, "would you have told me that the plan involved you absorbing the cost of Connor's version of events so that I didn't have to?" He was quiet. The quiet that meant the honest answer was more complicated than yes or no. "Probably not immediately," he said. "That's what I thought." She turned back to the window. "You do that. You manage the information. You decide what I need to know and when." "I know," he said. "I'm working on it." "I know you are." She looked at the city. "I'm not angry. I need you to understand that I'd rather know the difficult version than the managed version, even when the difficult version is about me. Even when the difficult version is that someone in that room was saying things about you that weren't true and I was trying to prevent you from having to hear them." She turned to look at him. "Especially then," she said, Because I can handle what people say about me. What I can't handle is not knowing the shape of the situation I'm standing in. He looked at her, the full attention, unguarded. The way he looked at her in low-lit moments when he had stopped running the managed version of himself. "All right," he said. "That's a real agreement, not a deflection. It's a real agreement, a beat. I'll need reminding." "I know," she said. "I'll remind you." Something in the room shifted. Not dramatically, there was no dramatic gear change in the air between them. No sudden heightening of temperature or tension, just a settling, a quiet degree of resolution, the way a joint that's been slightly misaligned will sometimes, with the right pressure applied at the right angle, ease back into where it's supposed to be. She turned from the window and sat on the couch, tucking her feet under her. He remained standing for a moment, which was characteristic Dominic Voss. Standing in a room was so natural as to seem structural, as if the room required it, and then moved to the other end of the couch and sat, not at the far end, not formally, just near. "Celeste told me," Maya said, "that you've been protecting things from a distance since you lost your brother, that it's become a reflex." He said nothing. "She said she's never seen you look the way you looked in that gallery hall." Maya kept her voice even. "When I kissed you." Still nothing, but he was listening with the particular quality of listening that meant every word was being processed. Nothing dismissed. "I've been thinking about that," she said, "about what it would be like to spend 11 years managing at arm's length, holding things far enough away that they can't hurt you if they go wrong." She looked at him. "I did a version of that with Connor. Smaller. Shorter 4 months. Not 11 years. But I know what it feels like to choose the managed version of something because the real version is too much to risk." He turned to look at her. "The difference," she said, "is that I'm done doing it." "Maya," he said, "I kissed you in that gallery hall because I was in pain and you were there." She said, "That's still true, but it's not the whole truth anymore." She held his eyes. "The whole truth is that I've been here for 3 weeks, and in that time I have watched you make coffee before I asked. Notice that I take milk and tell Helen without making a thing of it. Sit in the dark at 2 in the morning and talk about your brother like he was someone you still talk to. I have watched you be afraid not of the people in that room today. Not of Connor. Not of any of the things that make other men afraid, but of this. Of what happens when you let something matter to you." She paused. "And I want you to know that I see that. I see it. And I'm not going anywhere. And I need you to decide whether you're going to let me say that, or whether you're going to manage it." He was very still. Not the controlled stillness of the professional. The stillness of a man who keeps things at a specific temperature by will. Something different, the stillness of someone who has been handed something they were not expecting to receive and is not sure whether to hold it or set it down before they drop it. "I don't," he stopped. Started again. "I have been telling myself, for 3 weeks, that this is temporary, that the situation created a proximity that wouldn't otherwise exist, and that once the situation resolved—" "I know you've been telling yourself that," Maya said. "It's a reasonable thing to tell oneself. It's a way of keeping the managed version," she said, "of not committing to the real one in case the real one goes wrong." He looked at her. The calculating stillness was working, running its assessment, and she watched it and wait because she had learned, in 3 weeks, that the outcome of Dominic Voss's calculations was worth waiting for. That the thing he landed on after the careful processing was almost always the truth rather than the comfortable version of it. "My brother," he said, "was the kind of person who let things matter to him. Every decision he made had heart in it. He built the organization the way he built everything else, with care, with genuine loyalty, with the belief that if you treated people well, they would be worth treating well." He paused. "And then, someone who had been close to him for years made a decision that killed him. And the decision was possible because my brother had let that person close enough, because he had let things matter." "Yes," Maya said, I know that's the lesson you took. It's not wrong. No, she said. It's not wrong. Letting things matter does make you vulnerable. She looked at him steadily. It also makes you the person your brother was, the one who could walk into rooms and leave with people wanting to help him. The one you said was better at it than you are. She paused. Maybe the reason he was better at it was exactly that, because he let things matter. The city outside went on doing its evening work. A siren, somewhere far below, rose and fell. The light had gone the specific dark blue of a city evening, the moment just before the street lights make everything orange-edged. The brief window where the city is all shadow and the windows of other buildings hold small, warm, private rectangles of light. He would have liked you, Dominic said. It arrived quietly, without announcement. The way he said the things that cost him set down carefully, as if he wasn't sure the surface would hold. Maya sat with it for a moment, the weight of it, the gift of it. Tell me something about him, she said. Something small. Not the story of how he died or what he built. Something ordinary. He looked at her. The expression that had no name she had found, yet not warmth. Not exactly, but something in the vicinity of it. Something that had been living just behind the controlled surface since she first saw him stand at a window and look like a man who was tired. He used to fall asleep watching baseball, Dominic said. Every time. He would insist he was watching and then he would be asleep in 11 minutes. Didn't matter how important the game. He paused. I watched a lot of baseball alone. Did you like it? Not particularly. Something crossed his face, but I watched it anyway. Maya looked at him, at this man who had watched baseball alone for 11 years because the alternative was not watching it at, and felt something in her chest move in a direction she had been keeping careful track of without naming. Come here, she said. He looked at her. I'm not going to kiss you, she said. I'm just come here. He moved. Not immediately. There was a moment. A beat. The usual calculation, but he moved, closing the distance between them on the couch. And she leaned her shoulder against his arm and felt him go still. And then, by degrees, not still. He was warm. That was what she noticed first. What she filed, without examination, that Dominic Voss, who ran at a temperature the world seemed to experience as cold, was warm in the specific physical sense, and the warmth of him was the kind of thing that happened to your body before your mind had an opinion about it. They sat like that for a while. The city outside continued. A text came in on her phone, Priya. Checking in, and she answered it, one-handed without moving. You should know something, he said. His voice, close, had a different quality than across a room quieter. The edges of it, less guarded. Tell me, the night at the hotel, a pause, when you kissed me. Yes, I knew who you were, he said. I've said that, but I haven't said I hadn't been in a room with you before that night. I had looked into you. Yes, I had formed assessments, but that was at a distance. And then you walked into that gallery hall and you were, he stopped, the precise man searching for precision. You were not what I had assessed. You were... Another stop. What? She said. Present, he said, in a way that most people aren't. You walked in the middle of the worst moment of your evening, and you were entirely there. Not managing, not performing composure, just there. He paused. I noticed it before you kissed me. I would have noticed it regardless. Maya was quiet for a moment. She was thinking about what it cost him to say that. How many layers of the controlled surface it had to come through. How many years of the managed version of himself it had to get past before it could arrive as language. I was there because I was too hurt to be anywhere else, she said. I know. His arm, at her shoulder, shifted slightly. Not an embrace. Not exact, more like a settling. The way a structure settles when it accepts a weight it has decided to bear. That made it more true, not less. She turned her head and looked at him from close range. which was different from across a room. In every way she was still cataloguing. His face, close, had the specific texture of a face that had been through things not old. Not in the way that word diminishes, but seasoned. The way materials are seasoned by use and time, and the specific applications of pressure that leave them stronger at the grain rather than weaker. "I want to ask you something," she said. "Ask. And I want you to not give me the managed version. Whatever it is, the real one." His eyes, close, were darker than they appeared across a room. "All right. When you didn't step back," she said. "In the gallery hall. When you let me kiss you, and you didn't step back." She held his eyes. "What were you thinking?" A long silence. The careful man being careful, except she had asked him not to be. Had asked him for the real thing, and she watched him decide, actually watched the decision move through his face. The small surrendering of the managed version in favor of something that required more from him. "I was thinking," he said, "that I had been in rooms with powerful people and difficult people and dangerous people my entire life, and none of them had ever walked straight at me like that. Like I was the thing they needed. Not the organization, not the protection, not the power, just," he paused, "me." The word sat in the room between them, small and complete. "And I thought," he continued, "that I had spent 11 years making sure nothing got close enough to matter, and I was very tired of it. And you were there, and you were not asking permission." Maya reached up and put her hand on his jaw, the same gesture as the gallery hall, the same deliberate placement, and felt him go completely still in the specific way he had gone still that night. The held breath quality of it. "That night," she said softly, "did you mean it? When you didn't step back, did you mean it?" "Yes," he said, immediately. No calculation. "I thought so," she said. She kissed him. Not the kiss in the gallery hall, which had been pain finding an exit and landing somewhere better than it expected. Not the kiss in the kitchen on Thursday night, which had been an answer to a question. This was something else, third thing. Smaller in some ways, larger in others. The kind of kiss that isn't trying to prove anything or say anything that language could carry. The kind that is simply itself. Two people in a room at the end of a long day, choosing each other with the quiet certainty of a decision that has been made and doesn't need to be made again. When she pulled back, he was looking at her with an expression she had not seen before on his facinote, the calculation. Not the managed distance. Not even the warmth. That was almost warmth she had been cataloguing. Something more stripped than that. Something that looked like what a man looks like when he stops performing who he is and is simply in the room with the thing that matters to him. "You're staying," he said. "I'm staying," she said. "Not because of the situation. The situation is over," she said. "I'm staying because I want to. I've been wanting to for a while. I was waiting for the right moment to say it directly. This was the right moment." Something in his voice, just barely, had the warmth that was almost warmth, and a fraction more the fraction that was still learning how to exist in his register, but was trying. "I thought so," she said. He looked at her. "I'm not easy," he said. "To be with, I know that. I manage. I withhold. I make decisions without adequate consultation. A pause. I've been told. By Celeste. Primarily. I know," Maya said. "I've noticed." She looked at him. "I'm also not easy. I will tell you exactly what I think, even when it's inconvenient. I will walk into rooms you've asked me not to walk into. I will rebuild the file and trace the number and show up at the Carrington Club." She paused. "We're going to be a lot of work for each other." "Yes," he said. "And," he looked at her with the full attention, the real version, not the managed one, and said, "And I find I would rather do the work." The city outside had completed its transition into full evening. The river below the windows caught the lights of the bridges and threw them back in scattered pieces. And somewhere in the apartment, Helen had left something in a low light that made the room feel less like a space designed for isolation and more like somewhere a person could actually live. Maya settled back against his arm, and this time his arm moved entirely, without the half measure of the settling. All the way around her hand, she felt him breathe. One long breath, the kind people take when they've been holding something and finally set it down. She thought, there you are. 3 weeks later, Dominic asked her a practical question. Was she planning to keep her apartment in Lincoln Park? She said she hadn't decided. He said she didn't have to decide immediately. She said she knew that. He said, but if she was going to stay here, some things should probably be changed. She looked at him. Like what? The desk in your room faces the wrong direction, he said. You've been angling your chair since the first week, and you need more shelf space. You have books on the floor. She looked at him for a long moment. You noticed the books on the floor, she said. They're a trip hazard. You noticed the books on the floor on the 3rd day, she said. I remember because I put them there on the 2nd day, and on the 3rd morning the 3rd one had been moved slightly, like someone had looked at the spines. She held his eyes. You were reading my books. A beat. I was assessing the shelf space problem. You were reading my books. Dominic. Something crossed his face, the thing that wasn't quite a smile but lived in the same neighborhood, closer than usual. There was a biography of Frank Lloyd Wright, he said. I was curious about the annotation style. I annotate in pencil. I noticed. She laughed. An actual laugh, full and surprised. And it did something to the room, not changing it. Exactly, but filling in a frequency it hadn't had before. The specific warmth of a laugh in a space that had been designed by someone who understood everything about architecture and less about the particular way rooms feel when they are lived in rather than simply occupied. Dominic looked at her when she laughed. She had started to notice this, the way he attended to it. Specific and unhurried. The way he attended to things he found worth attending to. The desk, she said, when she had stopped laughing. And the shelves. Yes. And what else? He looked at her. Whatever else you need, he said. This is your space too, if you want it to be. Maya Reeves, who had spent 26 years learning to hold her needs a little smaller so that everyone around her could breathe easier, looked at the man who was offering her not space in a penthouse, but space in the actual sense. The room to be as much as she was, rather than the edited version, and said, I want it to be. He nodded, not dramatically, not with the weight of a declaration, just acknowledged, filed, acted on. That afternoon he rearranged the desk himself. She came into the room and found it facing the window, the way she would have put it if she'd been the one to set it up from the start. She stood in the doorway and looked at it for a moment. He was in the hallway behind her. Better, he said. Better, she said. She had gone looking for Lily and found something she hadn't been looking for. She had walked into a gallery hall to stop herself from crying and kissed a stranger out of pain, and the stranger had not stepped back, and everything after that had been the consequence of one unplanned, impractical, entirely human decision. She thought about this sometimes, the specific geometry of Ithau clothes she had come to not walking into that gallery hall, to taking the other corridor, to finding a bathroom instead and crying quietly in a stall and going back to the party and marrying Connor in the spring and spending years in the managed version of a life she had already begun to suspect didn't fit. The crack had to happen. She understood that, now. It had been building for a long time, in the too many signs she had looked away from, the too many moments she had filed under other explanations. The gallery hall was just where it finally broke open, and what came through was not what she would have chosen. It was better, not easier, not simpler. She was learning the language of a man who spoke mostly in action and silence, and he was learning to let the managed version go, and they were doing it at the same time, which meant there were days that required patience and honesty and the specific willingness to say the uncomfortable thing rather than let it accumulate. There were days when he made a decision without telling her and she called him on it, and he looked at her with the expression of someone who knows they're wrong and is still adjusting to what that means in practice. There were days when she pushed too far, demanded too much transparency, too fast, and had to learn the difference between honesty and pressure. It was work, the good kind. She had kissed him because she was hurting. She stayed because she chose to with open eyes, having seen clearly what his life was and what hers would be inside it, having decided that the real version of the thing was worth more than the managed version of something easier. The first time, she hadn't known what she was doing. She knew now. That was the difference. That was everything.